Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my weekly compendium of case reports between the 5th to the 10th of May 2021. Case files number 124 to 129. Case file number 124, written by Round Management 597. Siblings connected by fate. Their cord came back 5 years late. It was a typical school night back in high school. I'm the youngest sibling. I have 2 older brothers, and at that time, I lived with my whole family, mom and dad included. My grandparents are wealthy, so every once in a while, we would meet them for dinner at their country club 15 minutes from my house. With everyone being busy on a weekday, it was normal for us to take more than one car, whatever was the most convenient way for us to get there on time to meet for dinner. This time, specifically, I went with just my older brother to the country club in his 2006-2007 Toyota Camry that my grandparents bought for him when he got his license, which was super generous as my family couldn't afford to get him one. We are very thankful for them as they have helped us out a lot over the years. I can't remember exactly which year the car is, but that's not important. What is important though is that the car does not have Bluetooth. Therefore, it required an auxiliary cord to play music from our phones. Everything about this glitch is so vivid. We get to dinner and everything is normal. We were playing music on the way to dinner. We get back to the car after dinner. The sun had gone down. However, now the black auxiliary cord he'd been using the whole year was gone. I remember searching the car, moving the seat back and forth, asked him if he's sure he's locked the car, and he was. It also would be such a weird thing to take by itself. My brother actually being into this kind of glitch stuff like I am, we marked it down as a glitch at the time. Couldn't explain where it went, and it couldn't have gone missing. We moved on with our lives and thought, it's pretty cool and funny, but weird that it just went missing randomly, you know? Now audience, I know what you're thinking. There are a million stories of things just going missing unexplainably on here, but this is where it gets twisted. Fast forward probably 5 years to last year, 2019-2020, prior to the virus. I was a freshman in college. My fraternity had a parents' weekend and both my parents couldn't make it, so I flew out to see my brother that weekend in his new home in Texas. For reference, he moved from New York where we grew up after he graduated college for a job. And I'm in Arizona for college, so it was not far or anything. I remember wanting in and out, so we went to the parking garage in his new apartment complex where, funny enough, he keeps the exact same car he has had since he was a senior in high school, the blue 2007 Toyota Camry that my grandparents got him. We finally get to the car. I live in New York when I'm not at school, so it was cool to see it again. It had been a few years, and I cannot make this up. When we stepped foot in the car, the exact same black auxiliary cord from 5 years before that we lost together that one night was in his car. Now I know what you're all gonna think. Obviously, he just got a new one, and it just so happened to look the same. When we looked at each other to discuss, the first thing he did was accuse me of pranking him. I know my brother so well. He wouldn't keep this gig up. It's not worth it. That auxiliary cord reappeared 5 years later when we got into his car together and had both of us in shock. It felt like some weird game someone was playing with us. I can't express enough that it was not an Apple cord. It was the same black cord that I remember using on that night of dinner when it went missing. This story is so legitimately true, it's just unnerving to me because I can't properly convey that to other people. As the title says, this unfolded over the course of 5 years, and I'm so glad that I had my brother there to experience it with me. The reason I added this little part at the end is because when I read the stories on here, I like to confirm that they are true, otherwise they're worth nothing. Case notes, file number 124. So my thought is, was the cord plugged into the car or just strewn about on the dashboard? Without it reappearing, it's within the realm of possibility that it was just stolen those 5 years ago, although you do say your brother locked the car. And yeah, it would be such a weird thing to steal, just a headphone cord. But with it returning, especially in the exact same way it disappeared in, strikes me more as the out-of-phase phenomenon. where people or objects can lose connectivity to reality. They phase out, although with the exception that they still appear to be bound by the gravity of the planet and its relative motion. Otherwise, they'd reappear in empty space, millions of miles from Earth. Usually they reappear after a few minutes or hours, though. But who's to say it can't last for years? Case file number 125, written by SNL 1819. Pizza and joy in the air, but now a duplicate, she will declare. So I work at a fast food place, one of the big named franchises. I was the closing manager tonight, on April 20th, 2021. It was just me and my closing driver. My driver was on a delivery and an order popped up on the screen. It was an order placed on the web, so I didn't talk to anyone. I put the 2 pizzas and the side in the oven and go to wait by the cutting station for the food to come out. While I'm waiting, a silver bar falls onto the ground back in the dishwashing area. The silver bars separate the Lexans in containers on our make line, like a buffer if you will. Anyways, it falls. Again, no one is in the store except for me, so it freaked me the hell out. It was very loud. I walk back in the general direction and turn the corner. There's the bar just sitting on the floor. I even took a video after it fell and sent it to my wife because I was tripping out. I didn't pick it up or touch it at all. I just walked back to the cutting station to box up the odor. You know, cleanliness and all. Well, the weird thing is, when I went back to the cut station, I boxed up the side and 1 thin crust pizza. At this point, my driver walks in the front door of the store, and I turn around to grab the original crust pizza. I cut it and tell him his delivery is up and ready to go. Then, I saw another pizza coming out of the oven. I only put in that 1 order, 2 pizzas and 1 side, but here is somehow a random 3rd pizza. And it was a duplicate of the thin crust pizza. I don't know why, but I initially thought that it was my driver that made it. He couldn't have, he just came back while I was boxing up this order. So I asked him. I don't know why, because I knew the answer, but I was again freaked out. So I asked if he made the pizza and he chuckled and said no, he just got back to the store. So I cut the pizza, then threw it away. I know, I'm weird. It's just a habit to cut a pizza when it comes out of the oven. But neither of us wanted to eat it since we didn't know how it appeared there. It tripped me out. He left for his delivery and I was on edge for the rest of the night. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was a crossover universe when the silver bar fell, and it triggered something. I have no clue. All I know is I've been at this pizza company for 10 years, this store in particular for 3, and this has never happened before. Case notes, file number 125. Okay, so very important. I'm reading the comments here, and I see that the duplicate mystery pizza had pineapple on it. Well, that settles it. It was demons responsible for this. The only possible explanation. Joking aside, that is a mind warp indeed. It's not like this could be a pizza you forgot from hours ago that have been burnt to cinders and charcoal. You say that this thin crust was the same configuration as the order's thin crust, the same ingredients, so a proper duplicate. Obviously, there's no way you just accidentally made 2 pizzas. Even with years of experience, making a pizza is still an involved enough process. I know, I've tried. Disappearing and reappearing objects, that's common. But materializing entirely new matter from nowhere, that's a different ballgame entirely. The only conceivable explanation is that you blacked out and made a second pizza without realizing it. Like your memory was wiped out for those few minutes. Perhaps this was somehow triggered by the silver bar falling down. I know hypnotists use audio cues to wake people up. Then the bar falling would be you waking up, not being put under. Now, why someone would have hypnotized you to make a pizza that they didn't collect, I really don't know. Anywho, total speculation, but that's the fun part. Case file number 126, written by Spicy Marge 19, traveling through time and space, only to wind up in the same place. First time posting here. I read the flowchart and I think this fits, so here goes. I went grocery shopping today, and the supermarket I went to didn't have one, but very important, ingredient I needed for dinner. So once I was done, I drove to another supermarket down the road. As I walked toward the aisle I needed, I saw an older man looking at me, probably about 65 years old. I'm 26 for reference. Anyway, I looked at him briefly and immediately thought he looked like a much older version of my husband, who is 30. I didn't think much of it and began walking down the aisle. As I got to the ingredient I was after, there was a woman standing in exactly the same spot. She had blonde hair, was exactly my height, and looked like an older version of me, again about 65. Then I noticed we had the exact same handbag. It's a Louis Vuitton handbag that was given to me by an aunt I'm very close to. The woman looked at me, and I swear to you, she slightly smirked before walking away. I stared back at her as she walked away before I heard a voice behind me call my name. I turned and it was the old man who looked like my husband. I then looked towards the woman and she started walking towards him. We had the same name, the same bag, and we looked so similar, albeit the age gap. It was the most bizarre experience and I can't understand what happened. Could it be possible that I encountered an older version of myself and my husband, and what does that even mean? Case notes, file number 126. So time travel is theoretically possible to the past, yet it creates many paradoxes. This is why I prefer the many worlds theory. Traveling to the past creates a new universe copy that your time-traveling self now occupies. Kill your parents, and the parents that birthed you still exist in the original universe's timeline, so then you avoid paradoxes. Rather, I think your mind somehow conjured them up, a long-term foresight ability. Not of events, but of who you and your husband will become. Though if they interacted with the world, I suppose that would prove that they're more than just visions in your mind conjured. If they were you from a different timeline though, then it would have no bearing on their original starting point, their original universe. I don't know what they would be doing here. Why would they just appear to themselves as they were shopping all those decades ago? Wouldn't really make any sense. Case file number 127, written by OK Lavishness 0418. A creature unknown with a piercing cry to chill the bone. My family is from Guatemala. My parents grew up in a town close to the pyramids of Tikal in a very mountainous area. In 1976, my parents being around 10 or 12 years old, there was a horrible earthquake that killed and injured hundreds of thousands of people. My dad was even trapped for days under the rubble of his home before being rescued. It's a horrible memory for them. I have many family members with similar stories. That isn't the paranormal tale though, but events leading to it were. This is a story as told to me by my parents. About a year later, maybe a little more, strange things started to happen in the forestry mountains near their town. It started with the cries. Every night something would start crying in the mountains. At first they thought it was possibly a wild cat in heat. However, they started to realize that this sound could be heard from everywhere in the town. My mom said it sounded like a man wailing in pain or anguish. It happened every single night around the same time and lasted sometimes for hours. A few months later, the sightings started. It started with a large bird flying over the town and mountains. Then a large humanoid creature was seen in the mountains. My mom described it as kind of like Bigfoot, only it was completely white and less hairy. The people who crossed its path said its eyes were very pale, and the noise they heard at night sounded the same as the cry it would emit when spotted. An anguished, horrified sound. Almost exactly a year after the first sound started, the earthquake hit and my parents' town, being close to the epicenter, suffered great damages. Many people died, were injured, or became homeless. The wails, however, completely stopped after the earthquake. My mom often ponders if it was some sort of angel coming to warn us of the coming disaster, and it left having been unable to be understood. My dad believes that whatever it was probably died just like many others, falling victim to the earthquake. Case notes, file number 127. So this strikes me as an omen of danger and death. There's no accident here that it vanished after the earthquake. Somehow, whatever it was, It knew what was coming and wanted to warn the humans in the town. Perhaps some yet undiscovered wild animal. Maybe a reaper, even, taking form to prevent mass death. Though if that's the case, it appears they were unsuccessful. It's said that humans are not able to perceive angels, not in their true form, and in doing so they would go mad. Case file number 128, written by Plutonian Babe. Love is in the air, but all she has is a sim and a prayer. This one sounds childish, but I'd really like to get your insights, and I know I'm not the only one with this kind of experience. In November 2020, my ex and I parted ways for good, and I was both aggravated and upset. I had created him as my sim future husband, and I decided to change him, to forget about him. I wanted my new husband to be totally different. Opposite skin color, opposite style, and especially gray hair in order to be really sure that he'd be around my age. I am 46, and my ex and I broke up essentially because of a huge age gap, which was excruciating for both of us. I chose a messy hairstyle, pretty formal black clothes, big blue eyes, and other specific physical traits. I wanted him to play the guitar, and I built him a fancy recording studio. I also wanted him to have a decent career, and made him work at the office. Just a few days later, my girlfriend was coming over, and she asked me if she could come with 2 friends from another part of the country, because she was hanging out with them sooner that day. So I welcomed them without knowing them. I kid you not, when I went and opened the front door for them, there he was, my sim husband. He locked into my eyes instantly through the window with an inquisitive look, and when he came in, he said, "Do I know you? It looks like we've already met." My answer was, "Yes, you're my sim husband." What an icebreaker. No need to mention that he matches every characteristic of his virtual version. Job type, playing the guitar in a band. Guess what their dress code was? The gray, messy hair, the big blue eyes, the dad bod, and even the shape of his mouth. We got along perfectly on many levels that night. Laughed a lot, and he mentioned later how fast we clicked and how many common tastes and interests we have, especially in music. Of course, he hit on me pretty heavily a few weeks later. One day, we were chatting at his place and he told me, "Don't forget you created me." He totally got me. This kind of glitch happened to me another time when I created a different fiancé. I know, who looked like another guy I was interested in. I put a beanie on his head with big headphones, as his actual hairstyle was not available. A few days later, I was hanging out with friends and he arrived, with a beanie of the color I chose for him, and his headphones were over it. What the fork happened to me? Case notes, file number 128. So that this happened to you twice is what upgrades it from unlikely coincidence to a mathematical impossibility. My bet is, you'd have met these 2 men regardless if you played the game or not. This was just a way to convert the information from your brain into a visual medium, so you predicted meeting them. Case file number 129, written by Apprehensive Rip 752. He learned that spirits are real, yet the experience was oh so surreal. I've been wanting to share this story for years. It is easily the most visceral experience I have ever had, and it started with an innocent after-work drink when I was working in London, quite some years back. I'd agreed to meet an old work colleague at a pub on the Strand in London, near Waterloo Bridge. I'd never been there before, and the pub was cozy, small. I think it was called the Savoy Tup or Tap. My ex-colleague, let's call him Tim, was there when I arrived, and he managed to get a small table and a couple of seats, tucked into a corner of the pub, besides the bar. We were a bit cramped, but were thankful to be able to sit. After our first pint, Tim went to get another round. That's when I saw her. As impossible as it was, I felt there was suddenly someone standing in the small space between me and the wall. There's no way anyone could have squeezed past without me noticing. They literally would have had to climb over me. I turned around, and against the wall there was a young woman, early 20s, staring down at me. I knew she was a ghost. Thing was, though, she wasn't see-through at all. I saw her like I saw any other patron in the pub. She was dressed in clothing that I picked to be from the mid to late 80s, a bit goth in style, all black. She said nothing. She was just looking down at me, staring intently. I was frozen in place, just staring back at her. A few moments passed and I spied Tim out of the corner of my eye, beers in hand. I thought perhaps he can see her too. Tim sat and I turned to him, wide-eyed. He put the beers down and said, "What's wrong?" I turned back to the wall and she was gone. I asked, "Did you see anything besides me?" He looked at me strange and replied, "No," and I changed the subject. I hadn't known Tim that well previously, so I didn't want to act weird. Soon enough, it was my shot, and as I got up, I also took the chance to head to the toilet. I recall they were up a flight of stairs, and I remember a really weird feeling in the upstairs toilet as well. I tried to shake it all off so I could enjoy the evening. Heading back to the bar, I ordered, and as the bartender was pouring the beers, I hesitated, but finally asked him something like, "Has there ever been anything weird happen in this pub?" The bartender stopped pouring, looked at me, and asked, "Did you see her upstairs, did you?" I looked back at him. Motioning over to where Tim and I were sitting, I said, "No, she was over there, where I'm sitting. She appeared up against the wall." The bartender replied. "She usually stays up in the bathrooms. That's where most people experience something." Handing the beers over, I was told a story of how a young female bartender in the late 80s had hanged herself in the upstairs toilet of that pub. Case Notes, file number 129. I'm reminded of a past story where someone was sleeping in their bed. They were awoken to the image of a woman soaking wet by their bedside. Moments later, she had vanished, but she looked fully formed in the moments that she was there, not translucent at all like you'd expect from a ghost. And by the bedside carpet, it was drenched in real water. So to me it's clear that ghosts can, but don't always appear completely materialized. And often when they do, or maybe always, it's to do with how strong the emotional connection to their history is. The woman appeared wet, as she had no doubt drowned, and in your case, she appeared in the bar where sorrow led her to take her own life. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and you may as well start a binge session now. I have so many more stories on my channel.